The person I want to introduce to you is not Mr. Yuzyk. Like I mentioned, it was important for me when I first got elected to try and remind the government that this award had existed. It's kind of become a little bit more, much more actually invisible, defunct, but I think his legacy kind of lives on. This meeting over here is a perfect example because I joke with my staff all the time. Pavlo, who's in my office, runs my office, is obviously Ukrainian. Many of you know him. I'm Polish born. I was not born in Canada. I have Keon, who's in my office, who's from Iran originally. His family's from there. It's like a little United Nations building block. I think this is what Yuzyk kind of intended for multiculturalism. Become a very different cultures, I guess, except for Poles and Ukrainians, although we can debate that afterwards if you want to. Debate it afterwards. And then, but that's kind of his dream was, right? Like this is the grand vision that he had for our country. And I think he's very vastly succeeded at it, that we have this civic nationality and civic nationalism, civic virtues that we're so proud of, that we're willing to share with other people. And we still consistently attract more people to Canada than any other country in the world. This is the place that most people want to come to when they look at other countries that can immigrate for whatever those reasons are, whether they're economic or personal, whether they're feeling persecution. They usually, Canada is on that list of countries. And it's thanks to people like Senator Yuzyk, who created a very welcoming place that people choose Canada. So with that, I am going to introduce the Honorable Jason Kenney, who recently completed a distinguished 25-year career in public service. When he was in his 20s, he built the Canadian Taxpayers Federation into Canada's most influential advocacy groups. He served as its president and CEO. He was elected to Parliament in 1997. He was re-elected 6 times with an average of 76% of the vote, but not the most votes in his riding. I actually have, I represent the same area. I did manage to beat him. 58,316, but you know, who is counting? Who's counting? He served in key opposition roles. He was our shadow finance minister for a time, and he was also a very senior member of the Harper government. He led some of the largest federal departments. He was the Minister of Citizenship, Immigration, and Multiculturalism. He was the Minister of Employment, Social Development, and the Minister of National Defense. He also chaired the most influential cabinet committee, which was the Cabinet Operations Committee. The National Post at one time called him perhaps Canada's best immigration minister ever. I would agree with that because I worked for him when he was at immigration, so yes, absolutely, that's true. In 2016, Jason also launched a successful campaign to unite Alberta's free enterprise parties, going on to win a landslide majority to become Alberta's 18th premier. His government focused on the successful renewal of Alberta's economy while working with Indigenous people to create economic opportunity. Now, Jason holds 2 honorary doctorates, and he was voted best overall parliamentarian by his colleagues. He now serves as senior advisor at Bennett Jones LLP and BMO. He's a senior fellow at the C.D. Howe Institute, and he's a member of several corporate boards. Please welcome the Honorable Jason Kenney.
Congratulations, Tom, on your wonderful record of public service and serving the chamber itself. Ambassador, distinguished community leaders, parliamentarians, mesdames et messieurs, chers amis, what an honor to be back here with some long-time friends. I won't say old friends because they still look very young, like the Honourable Senator Yona Martin and so many others, to celebrate the legacy of the father of Canadian multiculturalism. You know, we Canadians take a lot for granted. We take for granted that, at least until recently, there has been broad and deep public support for immigration and diversity, for our Canadian model of multiculturalism. And we should remember the roots of it, where it came from, and how we uniquely, perhaps, in the developed democracies, developed such a broad political and social consensus in favor of the Canadian idea of unity in diversity. You know, this country was, of course, as Paul Yuzyk pointed out himself, founded by the 3 founding peoples, of course, originally the Indigenous First Nations, and then the French colonists of the La Nouvelle France, the parents of Quebecers and French Canadians of today, and the British pioneers that founded the 3 core groups in our earlier history, and the 2 original European languages and cultures out of which grew all of our political and legal institutions. And so in 1964, though, there was a growing diversity in this country. Post-war migration had begun to change the composition of our cities. Well, turn-of-the-century migration, 130 years ago, had begun to change the face of the Canadian prairies, that were the northern part of which were largely settled by newcomers from Eastern Europe, particularly Western Ukraine, from Galicia and Bukovina. People like Paul Yuzyk's parents, who settled in Saskatchewan shortly after the turn of the century. They were, in the words of my predecessor, I'm the longest-serving Canadian immigration minister. The second longest-serving was the great Clifford Sifton, Sir Clifford Sifton, who, when he realized that Canada needed some particularly strong, tough, resilient people who were expert farmers with great endurance, he looked to Western Ukraine. He looked to the breadbasket of Europe. He looked to what he called the men in sheepskin coats. He said, and I paraphrase, "Bring us hardy men and women with large families who have plowed tough soil, who now know how to endure a difficult environment, who have a bottomless work ethic." And he invited, very purposefully, the people of that part of Europe to come and settle the northern Canadian prairies. The parklands wasn't choice land. It required clearing trees and rocks out of soil before they could begin their first crop. Remarkable people who lived in mud huts for their first 2 or 3 years in the inhospitable Canadian winters until they could build their first modest cabin. And shortly after that modest cabin was built, you know what the second thing is that they built? They came together, exactly. They came together with their neighbors to build a beautiful Byzantine temple with an onion dome church, with an onion dome on the top to reflect the glorious, beautiful, unique ritual culture of the Byzantine Christian East. What people people who, many of them were not literate, but they certainly came here not speaking a word of English, typically, and many of them were treated as second-class citizens. They were referred to as bohunks and garlic eaters. In the First War, the Great War, as we know, the Galicians, the Ruthenians, as they were called, that from those parts of Eastern Europe, who were born in the then Austro-Hungarian Empire, which was then a legal enemy of Canada during the First World War, were regarded as enemy aliens, and 9,000 of them were unjustly interned, some of them subject to forced labor. Despite all of that adversity, despite the tough land they were given, the inhospitable environment, the discrimination many of them faced, the injustice of the internment, they were determined to build communities and families and a future of prosperity, like the parents of Paul Yuzyk. He was born into that Canada. And instead of, now we live in an age of grievance culture, grievance studies. Our universities teach young people to be hostile to Canada, to our institutions, to despise our history as one of endless victimhood and victimization. That's not how Paul Yuzyk and his generation regarded this country, despite their adversity. They saw beyond the imperfections and flaws of Canada to see its greatness, its fundamental opportunity, its potential for the future. They didn't opt out of Canada in a whingy culture of grievance and complaint. They didn't demand endless apologies and government handouts. They only asked for one thing: a chance to work hard and get ahead through their work ethic, through their devotion to the country, through their patriotism. As so many of those same Ukrainians demonstrated by service to the country in the First and Second World Wars. That is the kind of community, the ethic in which Paul Yuzyk was raised. He went on to bring that experience and that passion to his work as an academic. Eventually teaching. He was raised in Saskatoon. I've never asked Vera this, he must have known John Diefenbaker, having grown up in Saskatoon.
Yes, definitely. He worked on his campaign
There you are. I would have thought so, because Diefenbaker was a great champion of the Ukrainians of the West, and because Diefenbaker, for the Canada of the 1940s and 50s, Diefenbaker was a funny sounding name. He did not come from either the Indigenous or English or French founding nations. He came from one of these European immigrant minority communities, albeit German, but they were treated unjustly during the First World War as well. So they had a certain identification with the Ukrainians. And Yuzyk understood that. Paul Yuzyk understood that. As an academic, first at the University of Saskatchewan, then at the University of Manitoba, from which he was appointed to the Senate as the youngest member of the upper house at age 50 in 1963. Now, Senator, I know you're not 50 yet, but that was very young in those days for a senator. You know, Ernst Manning, Preston's dad, when he got to the Senate, said that the Senate was all about protocol, protocol and geritol. So it was a much older. There's senators here who are denying that. It was a much older institution. He was the youngest senator ever appointed at that point. Served for 23 years. Appointed in 1963, a critical year, because Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson, in 1964, shortly upon his election, launched the Biculturalism and Bilingualism Commission. It was right during the Quiet Revolution in Quebec. Quebec was, in a sense, all of a sudden replacing the church with the state as the center of its society. And there was the rise of a new kind of secular Quebec nationalism, which eventually led to secessionism or indépendantisme québécois. And so, where the English Canadian elites, like Prime Minister Pearson, wanted a kind of a way to understand this, a way to understand Canada in the context of rising Quebec nationalism. So he appointed the Bilingualism and Biculturalism Commission. And they issued their report, this is a Royal Commission in 1965, which essentially said that Canada was bilingual and bicultural, the two founding nations, with little or no reference to, or even a symbolic effort at inclusion of, all of the other backgrounds of people who had made up Canada as pioneers, as settlers. And so Yuzyk stood up famously in 1965 in the Senate to give a speech in which he called for, yes, respect for the founding nations, the First Nations, the English, and the French. Respect, even reverence, for the institutions and customs of free people, of parliamentary democracy, of the rule of law, of property rights, of limited government, of market economies, of all of these institutions and customs that they had embedded in this country. But he said, let us not forget about the third force in Canadian society, all of the rest of us. Now, in those days, that largely meant communities of Eastern and Southern European origin and some Asian communities, which were still relatively small in those days. Why? Well, because until Ellen Fairclough, Diefenbaker's immigration minister, eliminated country of origin discrimination in the Immigration Act in 1962, immigration to Canada was largely and purposely limited to people of European origin. It wasn't until 1962 that country of origin discrimination was ended, and it really wasn't until the adoption of the point system in 1968 that there was large-scale non-European immigration. And so the third force of Canadian society about whom Yuzyk was speaking were largely the kind of the precursors of modern contemporary Canadian multiculturalism, at the heart of which, I argue, without prejudice to any other community, was the Ukrainian community. I think there's a reason for this, because Ukraine had gone through a long and tragic history of constant occupation, war, conflict, oppression. And yet, the people from Western Ukraine, Galicia, for example, who had settled in the Canadian West, were the proudest Ukrainian nationalists. They had memorized the poetry of Taras Shevchenko. They were determined to maintain and teach and transmit the Ukrainian language, generation upon generation. They were determined thousands of miles away from their homeland to maintain a pride in that, even to the point of making enormous sacrifices to build those magnificent onion dome churches all across the Prairie West. Imagine the sacrificial love and cost. You all saw the beautiful completion of Sagrada Familia in Barcelona the other day, 144 years. That's what they did on a miniature scale in all of these northern prairie villages. The whole community putting every surplus dollar and hour of labor into those places to preserve and transmit their unique Ukrainian ritual culture. So for me, they were the avatars in a very real way of finding a way to maintain and transmit pride in their culture, language, and religion in a way that was fully compatible with their identity as Canadians, as subjects of the Canadian crown. In fact, Lord Byng, the great Lord Tweedsmuir, who was Governor General of Canada in the 1920s, spoke to a gathering of Ukrainians in Dauphin, Manitoba at the Ukrainian Festival in 1926. And he said, it is precisely by being true to your Ukrainian roots that you can also be good Canadians. That is the vision that Yuzyk had. That is what he articulated in that 1965 speech as a voice for all of the other communities. And it's amazing. One senator began a whole new perspective on our lives together in Canada through that concept of multiculturalism, which eventually, partly through his efforts at lobbying, became the official government policy of the Government of Canada in 1972, which was then further enshrined in statute in 1986. That is why, as Canada's longest-serving Minister of Multiculturalism, I served in that role for 9 or 10 years. That is why, by the way, that earned me a lot of nicknames. One of them was Minister for Curry in a Hurry. I resembled that remark, I must confess. Oh, by the way, as soon as I came in here, I smelled the pierogies at the back. You didn't even have to, you had me at Virenike, Tom. You should have told me. I would have been here earlier. So that is why I created the Paul Yuzyk Award. And I'm just going to make a kind of a last point, which is about today and the future. I did it, and here I'm going to ruffle some feathers. Okay, so a trigger warning, if any of you are hypersensitive to contentious arguments. I did that because I thought we needed to go, on avait besoin d'un ressourcement des racines authentiques du multiculturalisme dans la vision de Paul Yuzyk. I thought we needed to go back to the source of the original vision. Because the reason why Yuzyk's idea of multiculturalism was so broadly accepted across partisan and political social lines and became a touch point for Canadian identity is precisely because it was a positive, inclusive vision which did not seek to displace or denigrate the important founding role of the older communities, the French and the English, and all of the languages that are our official languages, the institutions that emanate from that, none of which are an accident. This Parliament is a continuation of 800 years of organic development, of parliamentary democracy in the British tradition. The existence of our common law tradition is an emanation of 8 centuries of organic development of the rule of law. La loi civile au Québec, c'est une continuation de cette tradition légale qui a commencé en France, ça fait 300 ans. So he wasn't seeking to displace these things or to be at war with them or to denigrate them as colonialism, as white settler oppression. He was proud of Canada. He simply sought a comfortable space for the celebration of what was best about people's cultural, religious, and linguistic origins. He was not a voice of the distorted version of multiculturalism that comes, I submit, from the academic left, from Gramsci, the Frankfurt School Marxists, who see multiculturalism as the application of Marxist dialectic principles. Marxism, I don't know if you got the memo, by the way, folks, but communism failed pretty catastrophically. Ukrainians, Poles know this better than anyone. And Koreans. And so many who came to Canada seeking freedom, the Vietnamese, and all of these communities. They know communism failed. And when it failed, communist intellectuals, they were called the Frankfurt School, said, well, economic application of Marxist principles has been a failure. So let's apply it to questions of ethnic and racial identity. And let's go to war based in our societies around race consciousness. And that has, I think, driven us down a road of deep and regrettable social division. That is why I thought we needed to go back to the benign, positive, communitarian, united view of unity in diversity articulated by Yuzyk. Not all of these different communities grappling for who has more status in the grievance Olympics, who's faced more victimhood, who gets more points in this kind of race to the race of ethnic and racial strife. And he also, I believe, would have been appalled if he had seen the kind of conflict being played out in our streets and in our campuses, in our society, from diaspora communities who have decided to bring ancient hatreds and enmities to our shores. That is not the original, positive, fruitful, multicultural vision of Paul Yuzyk. So now more than ever, we need to reclaim this vision. And let me just say that let his life, an example, his vision be an inspiration for all of that. In Alberta, we're doing our little part. I'm happy to let you know that in Calgary, we are about to open a wonderful, for the first time ever in Calgary, a Ukrainian language charter school that will be known as the Paul Yuzyk Ukrainian Academy. So, if you get a little tense looking at what's happening on our streets, the open, brazen hatred, the foreign conflicts being replayed on our soil, or the grievance politics that divide us constantly, that have turned many Canadians, many good Canadians, against immigration and diversity, remember there's a better story. There's a better story that Paul Yuzyk told us in 1965. Let's reclaim it. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. And as an Albertan, facing what I am, I mean this very sincerely. Long live Canada, vive le Canada.
From humble beginnings, the son of Ukrainian immigrants, Paul Yuzyk grew up in an ethnically diverse neighborhood in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. He witnessed discriminatory practices towards foreigners from an early age. After graduating, he submitted 77 applications for his first job as a teacher and was told outright that foreigners could not be trusted to teach their children. Paul vowed then that there was a need to build a better, more inclusive Canada. He launched the concept of Canada as a multicultural nation in his maiden speech in the Senate in 1964. In it, he directly challenged that Canada was a bicultural and bilingual nation, saying that the Indigenous people were here long before the French and the British. He spoke emphatically about how Canadians of all ethnic origins had participated in the nation-building process. In 1971, the multiculturalism policy was adopted.
Senator Yuzyk was a senator, and I wanted to make sure when we were organizing this event that we would include a Senate colleague of mine, Senator Yona Martin, just on behalf of both the Senate and also the conservative Senate groups. You could come up and give a few remarks as well.
Thank you so much, Minister, the Honorable Jason Kenney. I know that I would not be here without you. The vision that you shared of what an individual can do for one's country, and the inspiration of Senator Paul Yuzyk. So all of this is so perfect to be here with one of my favorite parliamentarians that I have ever served with, and just being able to listen to him again, to that incredibly inspiring speech. Thank you so much. Au nom du Sénat du Canada, je vous salue sincèrement alors que nous nous réunissons pour honorer la vie et l'héritage de l'honorable Paul Yuzyk. So I'm so honored to bring sincere greetings on behalf of my colleagues, and especially my colleague Denise Batters, a proud Canadian of Ukrainian heritage. She could not be here, but she knows that I'm here for her and all of our senators, but especially someone like Denise, who's been, she served so incredibly well in the Senate of Canada. And I see some other colleagues from the other house, so just want to acknowledge all the parliamentarians for making the time to be here today. We are honoring the life and legacy of the late Paul Yuzyk, a remarkable parliamentarian, a proud Ukrainian Canadian, and a man whose vision helped Canada better understand itself. Senator Yuzyk is rightly remembered as the father of multiculturalism in Canada. And, you know, before I did run in 2008 as a Conservative candidate, but it was in meeting the Honorable Jason Kenney in 2006 that moment of thinking about myself in serving Canada came in a question that he asked me, which was, what about you? You could be the first Canadian of Korean heritage to serve in Parliament. I did not know that it would be in the Senate and not the House of Commons. But one of the amazing projects that at the time, like he's saying minister to me, he is forever the minister, but that he had also powered a documentary titled I Am the Canadian Delegate. And it was about the first Asian Canadian Member of Parliament of Vancouver Centre in the province of BC, where I'm from, and seeing this incredible story of Douglas Jung, who also served with Prime Minister Diefenbaker, as Senator Yuzyk did. So it was the story of Douglas Jung, the documentary, and I was serving as a senator when the Paul Yuzyk Award was established, and really sort of understanding the incredible story of Senator Yuzyk by meeting his daughter Vera, and the family is here. It has been a true inspiration. So at a time when the country was still grappling with how to define its identity, he gave a voice. So 1964, my family arrived in Canada on my birthday in 1972. With clarity, with conviction and courage, to the truth that Canada was not shaped by only two founding peoples, but by many communities whose contributions were essential to our national life. And as a senator of Korean descent, I feel the legacy personally that Senator Yuzyk's story and the principled and visionary work he carried out as a senator have been deeply inspiring to me and to many others. His example has helped guide my own understanding of public service, and in many others, as I said, that our duty is not only to legislate, but to ensure that Canadians from every background can see themselves reflected in the story of this country. And I want to again remember the leadership of Prime Minister John Diefenbaker, whose inclusive vision of Canada recognized that immigrant communities are not peripheral to this country, they are central to its fabric and future. I've already recognized Minister Kenney, but I can't say enough, but I think all of us know, and those of you who have worked with him, his passion, his commitment, his true heart for ensuring that this vision and legacy lives on, and he has been one of those key leaders of our country as well. in different ways. Like I said, he's brought all sorts of awareness to us, and we just want to acknowledge his leadership and thank him for the great news about the school that will be in the namesake of Senator Paul Yuzyk. So this evening, the members of Senator Yuzyk's family who are present, we offer not only remembrance, but sincere gratitude. Gratitude for a life of service, of moral clarity, and for a legacy that continues to strengthen Canada. And to our Deputy Speaker, Tom Kimmich, he's quite a leader unto his own. I just want to thank you for the work that you have done and for bringing all of us here today together. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Senator Martin. Just, I know because it's just past 7 o'clock, I want to make sure I recognize just one of my MP colleagues from the Liberal Party here, Yvonne Baker from Etobicoke Centre, because I know, I'm not sure if you're in the House duty tonight. No? Oh, you're so lucky. Oh. Yeah, I'll call your lobby, maybe they can trade with you.
If I was, I wouldn't have did it to you.
That's okay, I will see you all eventually there, from the center. And I also want to just also recognize the Ambassador of Ukraine is here with us as well. So just thank you, Ambassador, for being here. And for the final group, this obviously would not be possible without a community group. And this group, the Ukrainian National Federation of Canada, unlike the Polish groups, the Ukrainian diaspora is so big and there's so many different groups. I struggle to identify all of them when I travel, and then I always find new ones. This is one I've actually known for quite a while. I know you do a lot of very good work across Canada in the community. So I want to invite Natalia and Andre just to give some final closing remarks as well. Please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. So on behalf of Ukrainian National Federation, Ottawa-Gatineau branch, we want to thank Mr. Kmik and his office, in particular Pavlo, for cooperating and making this event possible. Thank you very much. We also would like to extend our sincere gratitude to generous donors and sponsors of this event who made this event possible. Big thanks to the keynote speaker, Honorable Jason Kenney, for your inspiring speech. Thank you, Senator, for your kind words as well. Now I will pass to my colleague.
Merci beaucoup. Bonsoir à tous. Merci d'être ici ce soir. En nom de notre équipe, je tiens à exprimer notre sincère reconnaissance aux généraux donateurs et partenaires qui ont rendu cet événement possible. Au nom de la section d'Ottawa-Gatineau de UNF, nous tenons à remercier Tom Kimmich et son équipe, en particulier Pablo Couture, avec lesquels nous avons collaboré pour organiser cet événement. Un grand merci à l'orateur principal, M. Jason Kenney, pour ses mots inspirants.
We would like to thank Ukrainian National Federation as one of our Ukrainian National Foundation is one of our sponsors of this wonderful event. We would also like to thank Ukrainian Credit Union for supporting this event as well. We also want to recognize all individuals who worked behind the scenes. Thank you for your for planning, coordinating, for investing your time and energy in making this event happen. Thank you very much and enjoy your evening, everyone.
Nous tenons à remercier la Fondation UNF, l'un des partenaires de cette merveilleuse soirée. Nous apprécions grandement leur générosité et leur engagement constant au sein de la communauté. Nous tenons également à remercier Coopérative de crédit ukrainien pour son soutien à cet événement. Je tiens également à rendre hommage aux nombreuses personnes qui ont travaillé en coulisses pour organiser cet événement. De la planification et la coordination au don de votre temps et de votre énergie, votre dévouement a fait de cette soirée un succès. Nous apprécions sincèrement votre soutien. Profitez bien du reste de la soirée. Merci.
So again, thank you to Ukrainian National Federation. Thank you to the representatives. Thank you all for coming here. The reception isn't over, so please, I'm encouraging you, if you want to stay and talk, meet somebody new, say hello to someone you haven't met before, share some stories, and especially our stories about Senator Yuzyk. Please share those and continue his memory on Parliament Hill. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.